Hello, friends. How are you? How was your weekend? How's things? How's stuff? How's life? Uh, you should let me know in the comments. Mine's pretty good. I just spent the weekend with my dad, taking care of him, or not taking care of, just spending time with him. Mom was out of town, and then I got to go see my oldest in a play yesterday, which was fantastic. She's a really good actress. I'm very proud of her. So that was my weekend. I also finished Kingdom Come Deliverance, the Royal Edition, on the Nintendo Switch. And I want to talk about it because this is one of those games, like every now and then a game comes along that I fall absolutely in love with. And it's not that often, honestly. I've played a lot of games, I own a lot of games, and I've enjoyed a lot of games, but I don't fall in love with games very often. For instance, last year I played Red Dead Redemption 2, and I very much enjoyed my experience with that game. I very much enjoyed my experience, but I didn't fall in love with it. This game, however, I did fall in love with. And it is not necessarily an easy game to fall in love with for a few reasons. Number one, kind of runs like a hot turd on the Switch. It does okay. It does all right. In fact, I was playing this at the same. I started playing this at the same time I've been playing a game called Cozy Grove, and Cozy Grove is like a phone app. It is not much bigger than a phone game, but it runs like a turd, an absolute turd on the Switch. It runs horribly on the Switch. This runs better than that, and this is a massive game by comparison. It runs. It's not the smoothest running game on the Switch. It crashes somewhat frequently, but mostly near the end of the game, like actually midway point to the end. I think like once there's enough resources that it needs to be tracking, and then cutscenes will often cause it to crash because I think it just memory overruns. I only ever had one catastrophic crash that cost me a save, that it wasn't able to restore that save, but it was an auto save and they're pretty frequent, so I didn't really lose that much. But the reason I fell in love with it, I believe, is the storyline, is the characters, is my investment in the character's progress. And this is probably the part that's also the hardest to get through in this game. This is the part that I want to talk about, because at the beginning of this game, I was not in love with it. It was a very difficult game to get into. The game is based on realism, meaning that the combat system is not just A, B, A, B, A, B. You're not just mashing buttons, right? The combat system is very much based on like a medieval sword fight, which means you have 6 target zones: the head, the top, whatever, the stabby point. If you're using a shield with a shorter sword or a mace or something like that, you also have blocking to worry about. And so the fighting is a very slow paced. You kind of spend some time. It's almost like watching the first round of boxing, where you and your opponent are circling each other, waiting for an opportunity to get a stab in or whatever. And at the beginning of the game, there are no like safe zones in this game. Like, you're going to run into characters that will murder you right from the beginning. And there is no, like, progression. You eventually get better through trial and error and through learning, but you have to put in the reps. Like, part of this game's experience is putting in the reps. And you are, like, as a player, you are intentionally handicapped in the beginning of the game. Meaning that, for instance, picking locks. If you want to know how to pick locks in this game, at the beginning of the game, you're going to be terrible picking locks, and it isn't entirely your fault as the player. The character doesn't know how to pick locks, and so you have to teach him to pick locks. And so at the very beginning, it's got this weird mechanic where you have to put a lock pick in a certain spot, and then you have to like turn the lock, and while you're doing that, you have to rotate the stick. But the cursor's jumping all over the place. And lockpicks are breaking because you're way outside the picking zone. And until you keep training and leveling, that cursor is just going to keep doing that to you. But as you progress, suddenly you have a smoother hand, you have a steadier hand, and now you can make that move a little easier. And locks, there are progressive difficulties of locks, just as there are progressive difficulties of combatants, foes, I guess. And so sword fighting is kind of the same thing. There are moves that you simply do not know at the beginning of the game, and if an opponent uses those moves on you, you're going to die very quickly. So if you run up to an experienced sword fighter and try and fight him, he'll just kill you. You'll just die. And so it's a very difficult game to get into for that reason, because you feel at the beginning of the game like you're a toddler and like you can't do anything. And it takes a while. And it takes you saying, all right, this mission is important and this mission is important, but I need to go spend like a couple of days in game time training. I need to go to the trainer and practice my sword fighting. I need to go to practice lock picking. I need to practice pickpocketing or whatever version of the character you're trying to play. You have to practice this stuff. Now there are things that you don't have to practice, but you still level in the same way. Like alchemy, for instance, you don't have to practice alchemy. Like you can just do alchemy as long as you follow the recipe. You'll succeed, and it's not like shaky mechanics and you're throwing stuff everywhere. But you do gain bonuses as you level those skills. Horsemanship, for instance, you can ride a horse right from the beginning of the game, but you will, if your horse will spook easier until you get higher in horsemanship. The horse will throw you easier until you get higher in horsemanship. So at the beginning of the game, I found myself getting like, as soon as an enemy popped out of the woods, which happens a lot, there's a lot of like, they'll put an obstacle in the path and they'll jump out and suddenly the horse throws you. And then now you're on your back and people are stabbing you and you have to get up and pull your weapon and like they're stabbing you. You're drawing your weapon, whatever. It's not an instant like suddenly things appear in your hand and you go stabby stabby. So it takes a while. It takes a while to get into it. But at the end of all of that, I felt very invested in Henry, the main character. Henry, or they also call him Hal, which I didn't know Hal was like a nickname for Henry's. I had no idea. And I've definitely heard Hal before, but I didn't know that was like Bill, like for William. I didn't know that. I didn't know Hal was a thing. That was interesting. But anyway. So I felt very invested in the character, especially after putting a whole bunch of time into leveling his skills, putting a whole bunch of time into leveling his equipment. Now there does come a break point, like mid-game, where you're probably OP. You probably have way more equipment than you'll ever need. You have way more money than you'll ever need. And you still have half the game to go. And for this game, I don't know exactly how much time. It doesn't give you... In the game, it gives you like how much in-game time passed, and for me, it was like 100 and some in-game days. They don't tell you how many hours you played. In the Switch menu, you can kind of see it. It says that I played for 160 plus hours, and I did not 100% this game. There's still more to go. That being said, this is the Royal Edition, which has like 5 or 6 DLCs, and some of those are pretty big. Some of those are like very big, actually, like many hours long. So I did do all of the DLCs that I could. I did not... There's a tournament in here that just seems to be perpetual. I don't think there's ever an end to it. And so I did give up on that eventually because I don't need more gear. By the time you get to like the later stages of the tournament, I don't need gear. Like I have the best gear. I don't need more. I guess I could just sell it, but I don't need money at that point. So there is that like weird break point. But at that point, I was very invested in my character. I was very invested in the other lords, which... We talked about this last week in a video. This game is based on history. It's based on a few events that happened in Bohemia, Czechoslovakia, during a certain king's reign, and his cousin or his brother or whatever. Like some of this story is rooted in facts, and a lot of the characters are rooted in real people that existed during that time. Now, obviously, the storyline with the blacksmith's son is not based on anything. It's just they created that, but the history around that area is pretty faithful. They tried to stick to it pretty well. And what that means is you get to spend a lot of times with these lords and a lot of time with their constituents and with the peasantry. And I felt like the lords in this game were really fair people. Like they were not a snooty noble class that treated their peasants terribly. They felt like they were really kind of good dudes. Like I didn't feel like I was lesser. I mean, I was obviously, and I was told I was, but it didn't feel like they were treating me or treating their peasants like they were just useless scum. I don't know how I had got that in my head that like in this time, which is like 15 something or 14 something, I think it's 14 something, that that these lords were just these overbearing jerks. I didn't feel that way at all. I felt very connected to them and very. I wanted to do good by them, like as a person, as a player. I wanted to do good by these people, and so at some point near the middle of the game, I actually liked. I don't want to say I turned straight edge, but I stopped being a bad person. I stopped doing the things that there are points in the missions where you have to do things that are unsavory, but I stopped taking the missions that were, obviously bad or obviously immoral, and I started playing it more like I played it like a role-playing game. I treated it like this is my character and I want him to do good things because I felt compelled to do so. And I don't think a video game has ever done that to me. I don't think I've ever felt like I was part of this world like I did in this game. And we talked last week, this game invaded my dreams in a very real way, in a very, like I felt like these were my friends and my people or whatever. I've never had that kind of connection. I don't think in modern memory, in recent memory, I've never had that kind of connection with a game or with a story like this. And so I was absolutely in love with this. I miss it already. I probably will not play 2, which just came out for a very long time. I told Malia that I miss Hal and I want to be Hal, but not enough to play on a Sony product. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that'll hold forever. Maybe maybe once some DLCs come out and the price comes down, I might give it a shot on her PlayStation. But for right now, I'm happy with living with my memory of Hal. I'm very, very much can recommend the game. But again, for the first, 10, 20 hours, it's going to be extremely frustrating. And I'm not the kind of person who tends to power through those types of things. But I was so compelled by the history, the in-game manual where they teach you the history of this area of the world. I read all of it, which I don't normally do. Very good. Absolutely a 10 out of 10 for me. I can recommend. Just keep in mind, the beginning's rough, and if you're going to play it on Switch, it has some technical difficulties. And I think most third-party games on Switch do. I'm used to them crashing. This one maybe crashed a little bit more than normal, but it wasn't ever so alarming that I was upset. I mean, I was upset in the moment, but not prolonged. That is Kingdom Come Deliverance, Royal Edition on the Nintendo Switch. Yes. Please give me more. Got any questions, comments, thoughts? Those go in the comments down below. If you like the video, please like it. And if you're new here, please subscribe. We're trying to get back to 25,000 subscribers. I'll see you tomorrow. Today's 1,000 plus little things happy, successful people do differently. We are learning 12 ways to get a second chance in life. Number 6 is figure out what you really want. You'll be running on a hamster wheel forever if you never decide where you want to go. Some of us were born to be musicians or poets or entrepreneurs. Don't quit just because you didn't get it right your first shot. And don't waste your life fulfilling someone else's dreams and desires. Follow your intuition and make a decision to never give up on what you're capable of becoming. I'm 46 years old, and I still have no idea